About 3 weeks ago, Tom Udall was sponsoring a constitutional amendment. They want to vote on this in the Senate, with the objective being to allow the federal government to do more limitations on the sort of campaign finance we see in our elections, both at the federal level, but also at the state level. At the time, they said, we're going to have the vote. Chuck Schumer said, we're going to have the vote. And now they have even a little bit more support on their side, and it's coming from the lion of the Senate, Harry Reid, who says that he's in favor of it. They are going to do this. Here are some quotes from Harry Reid. The Supreme Court has equated money with speech, so the more money you have, the more speech you get, and the more influence in our democracy. That is wrong. Every American should have the same ability to influence our political system. One American, one vote. That's what the Constitution guarantees. No one should be able to pump unlimited funds into political campaigns, whether they are a Democrat, a Republican, or an independent. And so obviously here at TYT, we agree with at least that basic philosophy. We might well end up disagreeing with the content of the amendment that they're going to push for in the Senate. But it's nice to see that after a couple of weeks, it didn't simply fall by the wayside. You have Harry Reid picking it up again. In our production meeting earlier today, you seemed pretty enthusiastic about the fact that Harry Reid is willing to talk about this.
I think it's important. I think it's important that it stay in the conversation. If we learn, none of these stories mention Vermont, that, you know, a state actually has done it. A state was done it by lobbying by the Wolfpack people, you know, so our people. Like, to use that as an example, and not to draw too much from it, but it was dead in Vermont, and they kept going. And part of the reason they kept going is because they kept talking about it, and they kept making phone calls. And a vote where they were saying you have 0% chance of passing passes overwhelmingly in both the Senate and the House. So, look, is Harry Reid about to pass a bill that's going to get 2/3 support, which is what you need in both the House and the Senate to have a constitutional amendment? Of course not. It's the U.S. House of Representatives. He's not going to get 60 votes in the Senate.
He couldn't get that many votes to name an airport after Ronald Reagan.
Totally, right. So, I mean, I got that. And so if you think that everything that can't pass, and so Republicans has been a big response to this, that how dare Harry Reid exhibit nothing except political theater because it can't pass, which is just a silly way. That's as if everything we talk about, unless it turns into legislation, is political theater.
A lot of it is.
Yeah, but it's not. But
not all of it.
But not all of it is. I mean, if you believe in something, this is going to take 10 years.
Yeah.
I looked into his past because I was really curious. You know, how much money have his top contributors given him over the last few years? So from like 2009 to 2014, he's received nearly more than $500,000 from big corporations, including Comcast. So I'm like, that's interesting. Like, it's courageous for someone like Harry Reid to speak out against money in politics, especially when he's received so much money just from his top 5 contributors, right? But then I realized, there is no chance that the Senate is going to vote in favor of getting money out of politics. There is no chance that the House of Representatives is going to do that. These lawmakers, these federal lawmakers, don't have an incentive to do that. So part of me feels like this is political theater, but at the same time, it's still a good message to send.
But political theater matters. It doesn't always matter. Sometimes it's political theater for political theater. But first of all, this matters on two levels. If you ever think that this has some chance of getting done, it will get done because important people end up supporting it, right? People who we will convince and people who care about this will convince to support it. Harry Reid right now is one of those people. By the time this passes, Harry Reid will no longer be in the Senate. It will never affect Harry Reid. So it matters in that sense. In the small sense, it matters because we're in 2014 and there's going to be midterm elections. And part of the argument that if Democrats are smart that they're going to have here in 2014 is damn those Koch brothers. These guys are influential and they're taking away your vote and they've usurped politics as you even vaguely think you know it. As corrupt as you think politics are, it's 10 times worse, and here's why, and your vote doesn't matter, and it doesn't matter because their money has changed the course of elections in this country, and that's going to be a theme that they're going to beat home. And part of that theme is going to be, and here's a tangible benefit to that, we need to get money out of politics and we need to change the Constitution to make it happen. Us, together, the people. That's powerful. That wins elections. That gets guys in it who might change the vote down the road. So it matters.
Yeah, and they're not waiting to start to make that message clear about the Kochs in particular. Harry Reid says, the Kochs' bid for a hostile takeover of the American democracy is calculated to make themselves even richer. Yet the Kochs and their Republican followers in Congress continue to assert that these hundreds of millions of dollars are free speech. And I agree with what Anna was saying about, well, I mean, with what you said about him being out by then. No currently elected politician has any real incentive to change in a fundamental way the way we run our elections, because they have been successful with the way we've run our elections. And there might, for many people, be some appeal to using it to just score points, to look like you're in favor of it. But it is the sort of thing that if we start talking about it, it could get out of their hands and they could start a conversation that results in something they may not really want.
I think Democrats and real progressives have an enormous incentive to do this, not just because it's the right thing, but if you're looking at trying to maintain a long career, because as it gets easier and easier, as the Supreme Court is clearly willing to say, to put money into politics. For all the George Soroses out there and the few billionaires who support Democrats, and there are unquestionably some, the incentive to change the political system because you think it's the right thing to do for America will always lose to the incentive to influence the political system because it will make you and your people more money. And the Koch brothers will always have more incentive than George Soros to make this happen. Will always have more incentive than Mike Bloomberg, who's taken up an important issue and is willing to fund it in terms of gun control. So long term, money in politics, it won't come out evenly. It'll help the wrong side. It will help the corporate side. Will always win. And yes, are there going to be, am I exempting Democrats who are going to be like, well, then just let me in on that? No question. So maybe leave Democrats out. True progressives who want to win should support this because it's going to get harder for them to win because eventually they're going to run against some sort of corporatist shill and they're going to get a lot of money and we're not going to know where it comes from. And the Kochs could fund every election in the country and then at the end of that election cycle, they'd only be billionaires.